year in Australia, around 42,000 newborn babies require the help of a neonatal intensive care unit or a special care nursery. Now, 23,000 of these little ones are born premature, including my little Molly Rose, and up to 1,000 ultimately lose their fight for life. Miracle Babies Foundation is a national organisation that supports prem babies and sick newborns, and their CEO, Melinda Cruz, joins us on the couch. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Melinda, maybe if you could explain firstly how Miracle Babies came about.
Yeah, I've had 3 babies that were born premature. My first one, he was 6 weeks early and spent only about 2 weeks, the same as your little in hospital. Did quite well, but it was a very traumatic experience. And then I found myself back there again with my second one. He was born 13 weeks early, so at 27 weeks, absolutely. He was resuscitated when he was born. He spent 9 weeks in the unit, 16 of those days on life support.
What did he weigh when he was born?
He was 1.165
kilos.
Yeah, which for his week was actually quite big, and they kept telling me he's a big baby, and I would look at him and go, no, he's not.
So in the old terms, it's about 2 pounds.
2 pounds 3. Yeah.
Tiny.
Very tiny. So.
And when you see them in the cribs, I think that's the most heart-wrenching
so
thing.
lonely in there.
And then
it is.
It's shock. You're in absolute shock.
Well, I think when you have a child, you assume that you have the baby, which a lot of people are lucky enough to do. I think you 3 are probably in this category. You have the baby, everything's okay, you get the baby in your arms that night in the hospital with your partner, and then 3-4 days later you go home.
Exactly.
So until you've had a prem baby, and I was lucky that Molly Rose, there was nothing actually wrong with her other than she had to have a nasogastric feeding tube and develop a little bit longer. Let's go through for families there she is. She's got the tube in there.
Look at her hands across.
And let's. But it is. I was reading some of your dot points I'd really love to try and cover here, Melinda, because we found it, even though there's nothing wrong with her, we found it a very emotional experience. Not being able to go home with your baby. I had to stay physically on the hospital because I couldn't even think about going home without my child.
That's right. And a lot of mums aren't told that at day 4 you're okay, you will get discharged. And I mean, I wasn't told with my first one, and that was absolutely devastating. And when we talk to other mums, sometimes that day can be worse than the delivery day because you do have to leave your baby behind. And you go home to an empty house when you should still be pregnant.
Yeah.
So
and you know that little person is in that hospital.
And you've left them with essentially strangers. You know they're in the, like, we have the best hospitals in the world, I think.
Yes.
Well, let's go through some tips about what helped you for couples and mums and dads out there that have either got a prem or literally in hospital at the moment watching the show. What helped you?
Well, I think the first thing that I absolutely craved, which is what set off, I guess, Miracle Babies, was being able to link to other parents. I needed to talk to other people that had gone through what I had been through. And that's probably the #1 tip that I would say is...
Get in touch with
Exactly. Just with a support group, with people that you can... like I said, just share the experience with. One of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is the guilt that we hold as mothers.
We think we've done something wrong, don't we?
Well, I looked at him and I thought, I've put him here. Like, I did this to my baby. And I'll get a bit teary, look at my husband and say, you know, if it wasn't for me, your baby wouldn't be on life support. Like, we did this.
But it's not your fault.
But a mum holds that guilt.
I know.
Definitely.
And that's one of the reasons why you share with others. Now, another thing that you offer is to build memories. What do you mean by that?
When a baby's very, very sick, one of the last things you forget about is taking photos. And we tell parents, take a lot of photos. And if appropriate, you could bring in like a professional photographer, because when a baby is born full term and you have, you know, the photographer come around the ward, you miss out on all those things.
Yes.
I mean, that's a professional photo, and it's a beautiful memory.
I think people, they fixate on the apparatus and the feeding tubes, and you forget it's a little baby.
That's right.
It's brand new, beautiful child.
And this is the way that they've entered the world, and you need to be able to celebrate that.
Look how
one of the
big
things.
Look.
Beautiful. Another way to create memories is to write a journal, and I did, and I sat there and I wrote every day, and I would write my experience of coming to see him. My husband would write from his experience, and then we would write as if the baby was talking back to us to say that I'm okay, I'm going to be fine.
Can we talk about bonding with your baby? Obviously, if everything goes to plan, you get lots of cuddle time and bathing and stuff, but as we saw from those photographs, there can be a lot of equipment and apparatus in the way. How do you bond with your baby?
I think you get really scared of them. I was absolutely terrified to touch him. It took 3 days before I actually did find the code.
Hurt them.
Absolutely, and they're quite tacky because their skin, being in the humidity crib, they still need the moisture and things like that. So really simple things like being able to put your hand in the crib and just putting it over their body. When they're ready to have that cuddle time, they do wonderful work and ways that you can cuddle them skin to skin, which they call kangaroo care. And that's absolutely beautiful, and it actually benefits the baby because it helps with their breathing, it regulates their heart rate.
Does it go back to you? Because they really should still be inside.
That's right. And before we go, we do have to finish it up, Melinda, but one thing that I loved was someone said to me as soon as she was born, remember with prem babies, they take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yes.
And that was the best advice, because when we got to the point where she was putting on weight and ready to go home, I was sleep deprived and I took her into the nurses and we weighed her and she'd lost weight. And the nurse just said, I'm so sorry, George, she's lost weight, she can't go home. And I just burst into tears. Up to 2.5 weeks. I'm terrible, I can't even talk about it.
No, I know.
Because it's devastating.
And it's really hard.
So that's what we do. Like, we offer a complete program for parents because you are so alone, like that emotional turmoil, and we have a nurture program that people can jump on our website and find out about. And it's Australia's first complete program where you've got contact 24/7 through a nurture line, a 24-hour line, in hospital parent support. Okay.
I'm fine.
This is what happens. You have a baby, you lose your mind.
You do.
Please thank Melinda Cruz. Very important work. Very important. Oh yes, she's definitely a mother. Yeah. For further information, please visit the Miracle Babies Foundation website. Now let's check in with Marianne.
Do you prefer to undress in the dark? Perhaps you always wear a sarong to the beach. Well, you're not alone.